She was the last button of Button House.
The final button died today. Though where she goes, I cannot say.
Oh, he's off again.
It seems but only yesterday.
Don't go without me, oh stupid body.
Watched her life. 'Twas like a play, but with no children of her own. Who then will come to call this home?
Hello and welcome to the first episode of Haunting Button House, a BBC Ghost podcast, a podcast recapping and reviewing the BBC series Ghosts. Quite a formal intro there. I'm probably not going to do that every week. Trying to remember, it's the worst thing, or just read it into natural. But anyway, I'm Luke, and I'm joined by Tash. How are you, Tash?
I'm alright, thank you, Luke. How are you?
I'm good. Is that too formal of an intro? Is that...
No, I don't think so.
That's okay. Yeah, this isn't off air, by the way. We're just going to keep all this in, just
Absolutely.
because. Yeah. Anyway, this is our first episode. This is your first time podcasting as well, isn't it, Tash?
Yep.
Just to get the what do they say? Bring the elephant. No, bring the elephant out of the room. That's not the same, is it?
Ask Alexandra Burke. She brought that
she did.
The
Yeah,
UK,
yeah. I remember that.
So discuss the elephant in the room.
Yeah.
I suppose.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've not done a podcast before. It feels very alien to be having a conversation with a microphone in between us. But maybe it'll get more natural as we go.
It is always hard to just kind of egg yourself on to have a conversation face to face with somebody that usually, let's be honest, if we were watching Ghosts, we'd be sat on the sofa talking about it, not sat face to face. But
at a dining room table that we don't use.
Well, yeah. So yeah, we might as well just get straight into the episode.
So Luke, I think before we get into the first episode, I think we should meet the ghosts first. We'll find out a little bit about who the ghosts are. The show is called Ghosts.
Yeah.
So.
And they are quite a big cast of characters. We have quite a long list of who they are, so it's probably worth just explaining who they are right at the front. So we have Fanny, who is a stuffy Edwardian, played by Martha Howe Douglas. The Captain, a by-the-book World War II soldier, played by Ben Willibond. Pat, an enthusiastic scoutmaster from the 80s, played by Jim Howick. Kitty, a carefree Georgian noblewoman, played by Lolly Adefope. Thomas, a Regency-era poet, played by Matthew Bainton. Julian, a slimy politician from the 90s, played by Simon Farnaby. Humphrey, a clumsy beheaded Tudor, played by Lawrence Rickard. Mary, a plain-speaking peasant woman from Stuart Times, played by Katie Wicks. And Robin, knowledgeable but sometimes unintelligible caveman, who's also played by Lawrence Rickard. Bit of a long list of people there.
It's a lot of people,
Yeah.
a lot of ghosts.
A lot of ghosts, yeah. Probably worth just doing that right at the beginning, though. But we could probably get into the rest of the episode now anyway. Yeah. So the episode is entitled Who Do You Think You Are? It was directed by Tom Kingsley, who also does Stafflet's Flats. This Is Going to Hurt and now Doctor Who, for anybody out there who are fans of those. It was written by Matthew Bainton, who plays... I'm trying to find the list of people who they are now. Thomas. And Jim Howick, who plays Pat. But it's also, it should be noted that 6 of the ghosts are the people who are credited as the creators. And that's basically everyone but Katie Wicks and Lolly Adefope. Mm-hmm. I think, they're in, I think you mentioned they're in part of a group, aren't they? Some like collective. Yeah. I can't remember the name now.
Them there?
Not sure. Yeah, but yeah, they're the creators of the series. But throughout the episode, throughout each episode, there's different listed writers. There's an interesting note about the episode title, Who Do You Think You Are? In writing in Broadcast Magazine, Jim Howick noted that in the 2016 episode of Who Do You Think You Are, there was a famous episode with starring Danny Dyer. And he finds out basically that he's related to Edward III from the House Plantagenet. So they basically said that they love the idea of Danny Dyer's royal lineage. We mirrored this with our character Alison, who discovered her aristocratic roots, which she embraced immediately and takes on with relish.
Yeah, so I remember that episode with Danny Dyer, because I'm pretty sure we immediately signed ourselves up for Ancestry just to check in case we were also related to royalty. But
unfortunately not, no. I think, well
I'm not.
No.
Definitely.
I just still don't know. I haven't signed up yet, so who knows? I don't want to pay £80.
This is not an advert for Ancestry.
Definitely not if I said I don't want to pay £80. But yeah, so is it not £80?
No, that was the DNA.
Was it? Okay, well, fair enough. Yeah.
It's like £10 a month, you cheapskate.
Oh, okay, well, not even going to pay for that. But anyway, yeah, so that's, I don't know if that's where they took the title from. It seems to make sense anyway, so. But yeah, onto the actual episode. So we start and we see this misty view of an old manor, which we later find out is Button House. We see it in quite a state of disrepair, as it goes to different scenes, showing different pieces of different rooms and basically them falling apart. And we see an old woman, Lady Heather Button, taking her last breaths. Now, I bring up about the state of disrepair in the house because I can't believe that this old woman has lived here for that long on her own in a abandoned house.
I know. So we know she hasn't got any family because obviously the house has been left to Alison. Well, we don't know that at the time, though, do we? We don't know at the time that the house has been left to Alison.
No, well, it's not left to anybody because she has no relatives, basically.
No, but we don't know that at the time.
Well, at the time.
So, so we know she hasn't got any family. So yeah, who's been looking after her?
Yeah.
She's an old lady.
Just poor woman, basically. It's like, yeah, it's just horrible. Around her we see 3 different people in different periods clothing, who we assume are relatives at the time. But then we cut to seeing the other ghosts, one with their head cut off, one with an arrow through the neck, and one who looks like they've been burnt. So, and they make a joke about there being worse ways to go. We then see this woman's spirit leaving her body. And she sort of hovers over her body, sees the ghosts and is confused to who they are. 2 of the ghosts, Julian and Robin, start having bets on whether she will stay or whether she'll move on. And we see Thomas start monologuing about the fate of being a ghost. Before we then see he's rudely interrupted as Heather flies off. Some are happy, some are a bit envious, and in typical politician fashion, Julian tries to get out of the bet that he made. I did like this part where they're arguing, and Pat, in a really high voice, just goes, "Guys, if you please," which got the first laugh out of me. They start debating on, and they start saying if anybody's going to say any last words, or not last words, what's the phrase? Start saying any words for the person, and the captain bagses the room, and they all start arguing. We see Fanny then talking sadly about this woman, that it's the last Button in the family. And Thomas starts to say it aloud, who will inherit the Button house now. And then we go to another scene, but yeah, I don't know if there was anything from this scene that you wanted to sort of pick out. I
quite like how when Heather Button her spirit is going up, shall we say?
For now.
For now. When her spirit's going up, we hear Mary say "lucky cow," so it kind of makes us think, does is being a ghost all it's cracked up to be.
Well,
I guess we'll never know.
That's the thing. I mean, this is something I wrote later on, but we know that some of these ghosts have been here for hundreds, some for thousands of years, and we see later on their ways to make it more bearable. But I mean, it must be bloody boring. Like, you're just standing around watching people, basically. Well, yeah. So again,
and you can't interact with them either.
Yeah.
So it's it's really, must be really strange, and as you say, really, really boring. I also liked Thomas when he was sort of giving her some final words. He says, "But with no children of her own, who then will come to call this home?" So it's kind of what's going to happen next. But I suppose we shortly find out, don't we?
I quite like that we start seeing the glimpses that he's a poet, but not really a good one. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's quite just basic rhyming, I guess.
I did notice in that scene, though, Thomas is at the window, and the curtains are pretty much drawn with a slight gap in them, and he's looking out of the window, moving the curtain, and we see the sunlight on his body, and it did make me question, like, how does sunlight reflect off a ghost?
I think we have to give him a bit of slack.
But it's like shines across his face and like on his clothes. So yeah.
Why did they not get an actual ghost?
Exactly. Why? So yeah, but
we also I like how everyone just starts leaving as he starts doing his poem at the end.
They've probably heard many.
Yeah, I was going to say they've endured this for a while. But then we cut to our other main characters, married couple Alison and Mike, played by Charlotte Ritchie and Kyle Smith-Bino. And we see that they're looking for their first house together, or, well, I say house, for their first flat together. They mention that they're only looking for flats because they can't afford a house. And we see how just soul-crushing this task is. And, I mean, as previous flat hunters, we know how just dull this process is. So, yeah, I think we can both sort of appreciate that side of it. We see that as they're looking around, they see that there's a Buddy's Fish and Pizza across the road, though, so it's not all bad. That's all you can need, really, isn't it? Fish and pizza. And then Alison starts getting a phone call from a solicitor who informs her that she's inherited a house, and this being Button House. And then we get into the intro. So this is kind of like the opening scene, or the opening scenes of the episode.
Wouldn't everybody love to get that phone call, though?
I thought that, yeah. It seems like kind of the dream, doesn't it, that they inherit this house. I mean, later on.
I guess she doesn't know what kind of house she's inherited.
True.
It could be a 2 up, 2 down.
I mean, even still these days,
well,
probably
yeah.
not a bad thing to inherit.
Absolutely.
And then we get into the intro. It's not really like an iconic intro scene. It's kind of like spooky and sets up the episode, and it's quite short, which is a bonus, I think. I think whenever you've watched like a TV show like Game of Thrones, that intro's good the first time you see it, and then just gets more and more dull there as you go on, I guess. Then we're in the solicitor's office. We see Alison and Mike basically being talked to by their solicitor, and they find that they are the distant relatives of the late Lady Button. We find that Lady Button has no close relatives of her own, and Alison's the only one left, basically, at this point. We see that they have this family tree, and she's far off to the right, so, she's quite a distant relative. I do sympathise with Mike in the situation. Everybody who's had to do a grown-up thing, I suppose, in their life, and doesn't really know how to act in that situation, and he just keeps talking himself in circles, basically.
I think that's you.
Basically, it's me.
You like to fill awkward situations with nonsense.
Basically, yeah. I mean, that's a podcast, pretty much, isn't it?
Yeah.
Especially the potpourri part always makes me laugh.
I like how he continues to chew it as well.
Well, you've committed, I suppose, at that point. The solicitor suggests that the couple sell the house. They could maybe make a hotel chain out of it. As he's sort of explaining this, it's kind of echoey because he's not really paying attention. She's just realised that she's inherited a massive house. He mentions that the building work's going to be expensive, but they decide we're going to keep the house rather than turn it into hotels.
I think their idea is to turn it into a hotel.
Oh, yeah, they get themselves, isn't it? Yeah.
So instead of selling it to like a bigger company, they want to turn it into a hotel.
Yeah. Rather and do everything themselves. We also see a picture of Fanny in the. Sorry, that's childish. We see a picture of Fanny Button in the actual file of the house. So early on, we see her. So we know later on when they see each other, she'll recognise her. We don't see that in the first episode, but I think maybe in episode 2 we will. And I know they mentioned that there's a lot of work in this, but this is kind of the dream, really, isn't it? Like, they mentioned that they could turn it into their job as well. So you get a free house and you don't have to work. I mean, that's...
Yeah, but they've still got to pay for all the extensive renovations of the house.
I suppose.
We've already discussed what a state of disrepair the house is.
I suppose.
Would you keep it?
I think I would, yeah. I think I would keep this. Because, as I said, I know there's a lot of work and a lot of money involved and everything, but it's a nice project, really. You know what I mean? Like, it's something to do that's, I don't know, it's interesting, and there's history to the house. Would you keep it, or what would you do?
I think so. I think I'd at least give it a go, because you've got nothing to lose, really, if you've got it for free.
Yeah.
Although, who's going to pay the solicitor fees of, like, transferring the house into Alison's name?
This TV land, we don't need to worry about
there's too many practical elements that have not been addressed in the show.
Let's talk about the ghosts. Yeah, I know what you mean, though. There's a lot of legwork to do in this, but don't worry about that. We cut back to Button House, and we see Humphrey trying to find his head again, as we saw earlier on as well. He dropped his head right at the beginning. We see Robin and Julian playing chess, and we see the rest of the ghosts are listening to Mary's talk of the day. Apparently the wicker basket line where she mentions that it was 5 potatoes high, apparently that was an ad-lib by Katie Wicks. She just came up with that, basically. Well, that's what I read. So yeah, I do like that there's little lines that they've added themselves, I guess.
I think 5 potatoes high kind of reminds me of when you think of, like, a house, and then you think of how tall you are, and then you think, oh, if I stood on my shoulders with another on my shoulders, another on my shoulders, I'd be like 5 of me, or 6, 7, 8, 9 of me would be the height of a house. Yeah. Does anyone else probably not do that?
I think everyone does, don't they? Rather than whenever you find out that a house is like, I don't know, like 10 foot, you go, oh, how many? That's 2 of me or something. No,
not you.
Just about 2. Yeah. I should probably say this is an audio medium. I'm quite short, so. But yeah, so yeah, they're all listening to this talk. I like how this addresses one of the questions we mentioned earlier on, is that if you're a ghost, you've got endless amounts of time. So in this case, they pass the time by this quite mundane exchange of experiences in life, which definitely is Pat's initiative. Like, I don't know what they've done for... It's
a very scout thing to do, isn't it? Of having talks of the day.
I've never been in the scouts or any of those groups, but is that what it's like? Or
yeah, I was in the Brownies.
Yeah.
And people would come and do talks, and probably not often, but it was definitely a thing. I like how when Julian and Robin are playing chess. Like, they can't move the pieces, so they kind of just point to where the pieces would be.
Yeah.
And I like how Julian says pawn and Robin says prawn, duka duka. It's, I do like how he kind of like interprets things slightly differently to what we would.
I think as well, it's like, you see this later on, especially Robin, that he's not able to get his words across properly, but he's got a lot upstairs, you know what I mean? Like, he's been around the longest of all these ghosts, so, you know, he's quite wise, but he just doesn't know how to say these things correctly, so... but yeah, anyway, so we see the captain brings up his point after the talk. He says, because he's moved bedrooms recently, he's quite angry with Fanny because basically every night she jumps out of the top window and screams, and this is every night at 12 o'clock, is it? Which wakes him up, which also is another thing to know. Ghosts sleep. That's something I didn't think they would do, but
I'm just thinking about how if I was a ghost, I would just sleep all the time.
yeah. I mean, you don't need to sleep if you're a ghost. You know, you're dead.
How do you know?
Well, I don't.
You don't know.
But yeah, so they basically we find out that Fanny's doing this reenactment of her death, basically. Or we don't understand the reason for it till later on, but this is how she died. They start having a dispute about... Fanny says that this is her house, she'll do what she like, and Robin kind of says, I was here first, essentially. And Thomas starts complaining that all this arguing's disrupting his art.
I wish you would all hush. I cannot do my work with all this agitation.
Work? You haven't done a day's work in your life. Or death.
Oh, he's an artist. He's ahead of his time.
Oh, he can't still be ahead of his time, Kitty.
Guys, please. Why don't you just go back to your old room in the East Wing?
I don't see why I should. I wanted the garden view. Now, as ranking officer... The garden view comes with the screaming woman.
You get used to it after 100 years.
I think it's interesting, the first mention of ownership of the property. So, like, Robin owned the land. Well, how does a caveman own anything? Or how did they own something in those times? Like, you know, there wouldn't be couldn't go to, like, the archives and find out who owned that land in whatever, what is it, like 10,000 BC? Yeah, so, you know, he says he owns the land. I mean, we only have his word to go off there. But Fanny owned the house. So I think that's interesting that's kind of like an insight into the house as well.
I think it's just finders keepers rule for cavemen, basically. Thomas is complaining about interrupting his art, which Kitty notes is ahead of his time, which is hard to be when you're an artist in the 1700s. The argument is eventually settled by Robin, who suggests, why don't we just swap rooms? If she's on the ground floor, then it's fine. She's not going to jump out of the window. So they all agree. All seems fine.
So I quite like how Robin is the most sensible and reasonable in coming up with a solution for that. Mainly that he probably... Well, I suppose most of his life he's had a bedroom. And it's weird that the ghosts each have their own bedrooms.
Yeah. Oh, well, they'd have had to organise that, wouldn't they?
I guess so. But then obviously the captain goes to bed in his new room and he very formally lays down on the bed. And then not long after, Fanny comes in and does the same as she always does and jumps out the window. And she shouts George before she jumps. Or does she jump?
Well, we aren't sure at this point. We just see that she goes flying out of the window,
Yeah. And brushes herself down. And when she gets to the bottom, face plants the floor. Which
I imagine is how she probably would have found out she was a ghost. She must have got up from the floor and brushed herself down and then...
Oh my God. I'm a ghost.
Then the next day we see Alison and Mike are heading towards the house. I like that we get this compilation of them just unable to remember any of the words to Sexy Back, and I can't remember some of the other songs that they're listening to at the time, but they kind of know the main the main lyric, and then just go for the rest of it, which is familiar for the amount of times we've been driving with the Now CD, trying to remember any of the lyrics to anything. But also they don't know where the house is. They pull up, they start saying how they feel that they've always meant to be here, and then they realise it's the wrong house. So have to go again. We cut back to the ghosts who are in the house arguing about Fanny jumping out of the window again and screaming. But this conversation is interrupted by Robin, who sees Alison and Mike arriving at Button House.
I think it's important to add there, though, that when they're having the conversation about Fanny still jumping out the window even though she's in a different room, we can kind of and also Pat actually says maybe there's a deeply buried reason as to why she's reenacting her death each night, and we can tell that she clearly knows why that's happening, but obviously she's kept it a secret for so long that she doesn't share it, and then because of the arrival of Alison and Mike, they kind of like change subject and go on to the next thing. So I think it's quite sad, really, that she wants to share, but in that moment wasn't able to.
And it's kind of like something that's brought up as well from other ghosts as well, because it's a bit later on with Mary, when they ask her about one of her talks.
I think that was before, when she was doing the 5 potatoes.
Yeah.
Pat says maybe tomorrow we can hear about the trial, and she kind of like sizzles at the thought of like discussing her trial. So maybe some of them want to share a traumatic experience, but others don't want to share that with everyone. So. Which is fair.
We see them arrive anyway. They get out of the car. I like that Robin doesn't really know what a car is. He just tries to describe it as, what did he call it? Metal box with wheels, which is pretty accurate, to be fair.
It is, yeah.
As they get out, Pat hears Kim Wilde, which he's probably not heard for a long time. And as they're getting out, Thomas sees Alison for the first time and seemingly falls in love at first sight, starts giving a soliloquy on her beauty and stuff like that. And we also see that the captain says that Mike would make a brilliant soldier.
I think that's the first indication that we might have had that the captain might be gay. Also, just a side note to that, do we ever find out the captain's real name? Because we always call him the captain. In everything that I've read, he's the captain.
The captain, yeah.
So let's pause that thought, and then when we come back to it, if we do ever find out his name, we need to remember that we queried this. Maybe listeners would be able to tell us.
I'm sure I saw a name on like a wiki or something like that, but I can't remember what it was now. And I also don't know if that's, wikis can be edited by anybody, so maybe that's not true. But yeah, if you do know, let us know. We see Alison and Mike exploring the house. I like how Mike points out the armour and is pretty happy with that, which, to be fair, if I saw a suit of armour in a house I just inherited, I'd have the helmet on in a flash, to be honest. So, which probably not a good idea, but how many opportunities do you have to stick a knight's helmet on your head? You know what I mean?
Well, not many.
The ghosts aren't happy with their proposed changes to the rooms, so they're sort of explaining the different theme rooms that they could have. Fanny says, "Over my dead body." And then as somebody goes to call her out, she just says, "I know." But they all seem to agree that the last room, the Club Tropicana room, they're like, that's not a bad idea, actually.
That would be great, yeah.
Who doesn't love Club Tropicana? Club Tropicana. But yeah, so Alison, then we then see them outside, and they're pointing out the different things that they could do with the grounds. Pat sort of says that they seem nice. There's no reason to sort of look down on them. But as this is happening, Alison points at something and pushes a hand through Pat's head.
So we can see that that's obviously uncomfortable for him.
It seems to happen a lot as well, because one of them says, "Oh, I hate it when that happens."
Mary says that, doesn't she? Yeah. But I don't know. I wonder how that would feel. Like, would it be painful, or would it just feel like icky?
Yeah, I don't know if it'd be painful. I reckon it would be like
nauseous. I imagine.
Do you know when you get electrocuted?
No.
So like your body just has like this weird it's not painful as such. It's just like a weird reaction that your body has.
Or like when you get really scared.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe
and
really,
you're just like
intake a breath or something. Yeah, who knows? Yeah, let us know what you think having a human hand pushed through your ghostly head would feel like. The ghosts are, they seem that it's all going to be fine, and then they drop the bombshell that they're going to turn into a hotel, and the ghosts are alarmed at this. I like how at this point Robin's like, "What's a hotel?" He doesn't seem bothered by the idea until they tell him what a hotel is, and then we hard cut to him saying,
"Kill them."
yeah. And Julian agrees, although again, typically in a politician way, he doesn't outright say, "Yes, we will kill them." He sort of says, "Yeah, I would agree to the proposed use of force," or something along those lines. Yeah. And then as they're discussing this, someone suggests maybe they move to the gatehouse, and Mary just says, "No, I would prefer if we kill them as well." So at this point, we've got some vengeful ghosts in the house. But after some debating and some discussion, they decide that maybe they should just haunt them and get them to leave, as they are ghosts after all.
And just that point, I think Pat saying, "We are ghosts, maybe we could haunt them," is what gave us the idea for the name of the podcast.
Haunting Button House. Yeah. I think we did watch the first episode about 4 times, something like that, didn't we? When we were trying to figure out what we wanted to do with this. So, although saying that, I can't remember some of the stuff that happens in it, as we found out earlier. So, we then cut to the next day, and we see the first hints of how unlivable this house is going to be. So Mike mentions that he went to make her a cup of tea. There's no water in the taps. To boil the kettle, he had to plug it in the library, I think he mentions. And then we see or hear that there's a pigeon or pigeons living in their bedroom. So they set about trying to fix up the house. And they mention that start with the pigeon.
So I had a look, and I thought a bird in the house is not a good thing. Mm-hmm. So a bird in the house is a bad omen, and it says it's one of the most common superstitions around a bird flying into your house is that it's a sign of bad fortune or even a warning of impending death. So it kind of, maybe if you were superstitious, you would know that might be a sign of things to come. But other bird bad lucks are bringing peacock feathers into the house is bad luck.
However, a common occurrence.
However, in India, China and Japan, bringing peacock feathers indoors is actually supposed to increase good luck by providing extra eyes around the house to protect occupants from danger. A woodpecker knocking on a house is a sign of impending death.
So Woody Woodpecker's quite bad, really.
Whatever you are doing when you hear the first cuckoo predicts your year. It is unlucky to kill or harm a robin, but why would anyone want to do that anyway? Because if you do, then you deserve the bad luck.
Yeah, who's killing birds?
Well, exactly, especially a little robin. Why would anyone want to do that? And finally, if the ravens leave the Tower of London, then the crown and kingdom will fall.
I have heard of that one, yeah. That's why there's a raven master in there to sort of look after them.
Make sure that he blooming stay.
So yeah, I mean, you have to assume that pigeon is in the bed. They've written that in for a reason. Then there's this sort of hint of impending doom. Either that, or they just wanted to gag about a bird being in the house. Who knows? We then get a rundown of the ghosts going through their abilities, basically, of how they're going to use them to haunt them and scare them out of the house. And we're also introduced to the first of the plague ghosts. We don't realise there's a group of them until much later on, but we hear about the scary plague girl who sings... Lucy, who sings her scary song. And I like in this scene, the captain is quite good. He just has an annoyance about Mary's grammar just from the off. Like she, I can't remember exactly how she phrases something, but he's just annoyed at how she has. And then also when we see the plague girl approach later on, he just shudders when he sees her at the corner of his eye. Kitty, with some enthusiasm, gives some as they sort of line up outside the bathroom, ready to sort of encounter Alison. I was going to say Charlotte then.
I noticed at that point when Thomas is looking through so Alison's in the shower, isn't she? And they're getting ready to like spook her. And Thomas is looking through the door. He says he can't see anything, but. You know.
Well, yeah.
Perfect. I noticed on Pat's arm one of his badges, and it says first aid. So obviously, I thought that was quite funny because he's got an arrow through his neck, and I'm not quite sure that first aid badge was probably very useful at the time. That he probably desperately needed to know first aid.
It's a bit beyond first aid, isn't it? An arrow in the neck. But yeah, so we see them all set up, and they're getting ready to sort of ambush Alison.
So Robin's flickering the lights.
Yeah.
Mary, if you pass through her, you can smell burning. And obviously the plague girl Lucy is singing, and then Julian, if he tries really, really hard with one of his fingers, he's able to move things.
Objects, yeah. But before they do this, Kitty gives this rousing speech about how they should all try their best, and the captain is like, okay, yeah, that's fine. I like during this scene as they go through all the abilities you just mentioned, they keep cutting between what Alison sees and what the ghosts are seeing, and with the ghosts it's just this absolute chaos of them trying to make all this happen, and Alison is just completely oblivious to everything and just walking through. She kind of turns around when the lights are flickering, but that's about it really. Because they thwart them each time. The light flickers. She kind of isn't. What does she do now? She flicks the light on, which electrocutes
Robin.
The smell she's not too bothered about. She just
thinks it's toast.
The song, Mike gets the speakers working, and Julian's push attempt just doesn't amount to anything.
I do like though, like it's this like chaotic screaming and them like trying to get to spook her, and then it cuts to Alison and it's a little bit quieter, and then it's back again with the chaos, and then right at the end as Julian's like trying so desperately to move this vase with his finger, it ends with this final like porp as he like moves the vase like such a small amount that she's already walked past anyway and doesn't even notice.
He does mention that it is bigger than a cup, so
it is bigger than a cup, and I imagine it was quite difficult to
you have to give him some slack with that one. So it all ends in failure, and then later that day we see so they mention when she's in the shower that the hot water goes off, so they decide that they need to head into the basement to try and fix the boiler. Now this is probably the scariest part of the episode, I'd say. I mean, it's not really like scary, but you know what I mean, like it's the only one with a bit of bit of creepiness to it.
I do like Mike's song,
the Don't Be Scared song.
Sing something, make this less scary.
Don't be scared, don't be scared, I'm not scared.
Okay, you're making it worse.
So yeah, I mean, it is scary, like going into basements. No one likes doing that. I used to work at a pub, and they whenever they needed to do something, they had their cellar, but then they also had the basement part of there where they used to store just some stuff. And no one liked going down there because it's just an old building and stuff like that.
The thing is that kind of takes back to a conversation that we were having the other day. Yeah. In that, obviously we mentioned like in the episode 0 that you don't believe in ghosts and I'm open to ghosts. So what are you scared of?
I don't know.
So you're scared of going into a basement. There's dark. Totally understand
I think
that.
it's just being in a dark room just on your own. It's just scary.
But what are you
isn't it?
scared of?
Don't know. Who knows what it could be? I'm not saying that there's not ghosts. I just don't believe in them. But maybe they'll get me down there, and I just that'll show me, won't it?
So we meet the plague ghosts in the basement.
Anyway, yeah, we meet the plague ghosts. They're from just from the medieval times, and I like the introduction of them. It feels like, do you remember that Phones for You advert ages ago? There's a weird comparison. There was an advert where it would show like this like flickering image of a ghost in the background, and then as the lights went out, she got closer. And I guess it's just like a trope of like horror films of like whenever the lights go out and come back on, they get a bit closer. But yeah, when we see the ghosts, they're in the distance, and then the lights go out, come back on, and they're right behind them talking. But they're not that threatening actually. They're just like they're just critiquing their inability to fix this issue essentially.
I like how they know when Mike goes, so he's fixing the boiler, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he does something, and they're like, it's the valve for the filling loop, like as if like obviously like how a plague ghost gonna know how to fix a boiler? Like who taught them? Or maybe they watched someone else fix the boiler at some point and learned and listened how to do it. So that's something to take away. Listen and learn, and you will know how to fix a boiler.
They've had time on their hands. They've probably seen a lot of people come in and fix this boiler. I don't know when. Like I said, it's been, but they've got to have seen somebody. So yeah, they're just observant. They go back upstairs and inspect the radiators to see if that has fixed the boiler. And Alison goes up into the first floor. And while she's up there looking for this, she sees a nest of pigeons have intruded into the house. Just at this moment, though, Julian is passing by and he spots Alison leaning out of the window. And using his ability, he goes up behind her and gives her a slight nudge. And she falls out of the window.
I mean, that is absolutely what happens.
Yeah.
But I must say, Alison was leaning out of the window very irresponsibly.
Quite reckless, yeah.
I mean, to lean out of a window, first flight up, and to lift your legs up and balance yourself out of the window is, as you say, pretty reckless. So even if she wasn't pushed by Julian, I'd say she was asking for trouble.
You're saying she got what's coming to her?
No, that's not what I'm saying. But yeah, I think, she should have been a little bit more careful and maybe, but then we wouldn't have a TV show to watch.
That is true. It'd be very boring TV show in the end. So yeah, she falls out the window, and we see Mike rush to her as she's lying on the ground as her consciousness is fading, and you kind of see in the distance the ghosts in the top window, and this is from her perspective now. So you get this inclination that she can see the ghosts, but obviously at this point she doesn't know what they are.
I think it's the first time that she sees. So I looked at it quite carefully and tried to figure out who was in the window. So I think it was Pat, the captain, Fanny, and Thomas in the window. So that's kind of like the very first time that she sees them. Although maybe she obviously doesn't remember seeing them. That is sort of our first time seeing her see them.
The ambulance arrives, escorts her away, and in the meantime we see all of the ghosts kind of confront Julian for pushing Alison out the window. And I just love this scene, how it just perfectly encapsulates Julian. They're just asking him, did you push her out the window, yes or no? And he will not say.
A politician's answer.
Yeah, he even at one point returns the question back to Pat and asks him a question of something like, would it have been better if she was pushed out the window or something like that? And we also see Thomas. It's the first indication we find out later on that he's actually Scottish. But it's the first time we actually see any of his sort of like his accent come out in this. But it just feels like he's just doing just angry about it, I suppose. So this kind of prompts Fanny to actually talk about what happened to her on her death day, revealing that it was actually her husband George that pushed her out of the window and killed her. She says and goes on to explain that she was pushed because she saw him with the groundskeeper and the butler in what Mary describes as a manwich.
Or a Moroccan tea party.
Now, did you Google this? Because
No, I
didn't. I was like, is this a real thing? Like, is this? It's not.
Oh, no way!
It was made up, but I like the term anyway.
I like how when Mary is talking about... No, not Mary. When Fanny is talking about the groundskeeper with George and the butler, we hear in the background the captain going, "Good Lord."
Yeah.
Another kind of like,
there's another bit as well when Julian's explaining what a Moroccan sandwich, a Moroccan tea party, not a sandwich, a Moroccan tea party is. Watch the captain's face. He looks like puzzled as like, what would that look like? And yeah, she goes through this and explains all this, and she said she's felt it, she's struggled to tell people about this, but obviously they're ghosts, they've been around, and I think Thomas is the first one to say he saw all this, he knows this all happened.
He saw it happen.
Yeah. As did most of them, I think, apart from the newer ghosts, really. So that would probably be Julian, Pat, and the captain. I think it's just those three. And as they've gone through all this, Pat thinks maybe that was, the thing that was causing her to relive this moment and causing her to reenact it. And because of this, now she'll stop doing this. We then cut to later that evening, and Fanny reenacts it again, and we realise no, it doesn't. It's not going to stop this.
Her nightly terrors.
Yeah. And so as they're walking away, Pat and the captain notice the clock and think maybe this is worth a try. And we see Julian set the clock back, and then we see Fanny does reenact the death, but now they've changed it to in the morning, so they're all woken up by her jumping out the window rather than. Well, woken up as an alarm, I guess, rather than
in the middle of the
night. We then cut to, I think they mentioned it's about 2 weeks later, and we see, well, initially we see Mike on the bed reading some document, and you think, oh, well, what's happened here? Has Alison joined the ghosts? But no, it's just a fake out. She's fine. She was in an induced coma. But other than that,
they do say that she died for a bit.
Yes,
so.
Yeah, which is key, I think, for this. Mike, Alison does ask about the surveys and everything for the house, but Mike kind of, I guess, lies, but doesn't lie because he's just going to tell her about it later, I guess. But says no, they didn't come back, and doesn't want to burden her with it right this second. We then cut back to the house and we see Mary giving one of her talks of the day again, except this time she's talking about cows. I like a description of you want to get the end for looking. You want to get the end and not the part for looking and chewing out of, which is a good description, I think, of her face. And she's... what's she describing now?
Milking a cow.
How to milk a cow, yeah.
I think when she does the action again, the captain goes, "Good Lord."
When she says, give it a tug and you get a big squirt at the start.
Good Lord.
Which again is like, obviously later on, I think the programme was on earlier, but at this point it's past the watershed, and I wonder if they put in these like kind of dirty jokes in there as well. But,
adult jokes.
Yeah. But yeah, we see Mike and Alison return to Button House. The reveal to Alison that, or he reveals that the survey did actually come back, but it's all fine. He's sorted it. He's took out a loan, and he's already paid a deposit for the renovation work that they need to do. would this
I
take
wrote
away the
here,
stress?
do not do this to me, Luke. Ask me first.
Yeah.
So if we're ever in that position, please ask me first.
Yeah, I didn't think anybody would be happy for somebody to be like, I've taken out what I imagine is quite a substantial loan to sort of cover all this. So yeah, and this also adds a bit of worry into Alison. You see her at the time is not looking happy about this, and this comes up later on as well. But yeah, we see the builders actually arrive and they start making their way into the house, and as this is happening, Julian walks out at the same time as the builders are there. The builder makes a note that they all need to wear hard hats. And as Alison sees Julian for the first time, she says, "Oh, you should be wearing a hard hat." To which he freaks out about, realising she's seen me and has actually just spoke to me. But obviously she doesn't know he's a ghost at this time. He runs to the other ghost to tell him what's happened. And we see Alison later on in a different room having second thoughts about this whole project, basically. And with this and knowing how much he's put down in a loan to actually get this going, she starts doubting their plans, basically. Mike tries to calm her down and say it's all going to be fine, we're going to sort it. But at this time, we see heads start popping out of the wall from behind Mike, and we see Alison look shocked, and he's like, I understand your worries, as we see these ghosts all walking towards her. And then we end the episode with Humphrey arriving behind her, and Alison just screams.
Humphrey hasn't got his head.
Yes, yeah, that's
I think that's the key point
yeah.
that he hasn't got his head.
Yeah, exactly.
But how would you react if you were in Alison's position?
Well, I think I'd probably think I was going mad or something or something had happened.
You'd question your sanity.
Especially if I'd just fallen out a window and been put into a coma.
I suppose, you probably wouldn't just immediately think, these are ghosts. Yeah. You'd think that it was your brain playing tricks on you, maybe.
Pretty much, yeah. But anyway, that's the end of the episode. So what do you think overall?
I thought it was good. Good to start an episode. I think it's we meet all of the characters in the first episode. Well, all of the main characters in the first episode. And it kind of gives us a little bit of information about them, and we want to know more about the characters. What do you think? Yeah,
I thought it's a solid intro episode. It's not like the best episode of the entire series, but it does all of the groundwork for actually setting up the characters, and introduces them so you get a glimpse of who everyone is and what the setting is and everything. But I think if I was a new viewer, I'd definitely give the second episode a watch based off of this one. So I think it does the job on that. So I did put down a rating. I don't know if you gave a rating yourself.
Yeah.
What did you rate it?
I gave it a 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10. I also gave it the exact same.
Oh, right.
So we're on the same page there. But saying that, I had a look on IMDb, and with 968 ratings, it got a 7.4. So
okay, so kind of like middle.
Pretty much
kind of bang on, really.
Yeah. So.
So, I suppose we've just gone through the first episode of Ghosts, and we've encountered Button House for the first time. I thought it might be interesting to have a look at some other haunted buildings that we have in the UK. But as we're from the West Midlands, I thought we could start in the West Midlands for our first series and see how we go.
Yeah.
If anyone has any buildings they'd like to suggest for maybe series 2, we'd be open to those.
Yeah, definitely.
So, for this episode, we're going to have a look at Dudley Castle, which is in Dudley.
Funnily,
in the West Midlands, yeah. So I've got a little bit of information about Dudley Castle. and the ghosts that may or may not roam the
grounds.
The grounds.
The zoo.
The zoo. We'll come to that. We will come to that.
Jumping ahead.
So Dudley Castle has a reputation of being one of Britain's most haunted castles. The castle was first built in 1071 as a moat and bailey fortification, as was common following the Norman invasion in 1066. It was one of the many fortifications built by followers of William the Conqueror to help him maintain control of the land and its inhabitants.
And in Dudley, you would need a castle to control the inhabitants. It's okay, we could say that we're near there.
So Dudley Castle itself sits within 40 acres of ground, which is now home of Dudley Zoo and Gardens. The Dudley Zoological Society was founded in 1935 and the gardens themselves opened to the public in 1937. So we've been. We have been.
I didn't realise it was like that new. I thought it was older, like than 1930s.
The actual zoo or the castle?
The zoo part, yeah. But we have been, yeah.
No, it was good. Although just, if you do decide to go, it's all uphill.
It's very hilly.
It's very hilly.
Yeah, it is basically a hill.
Well, you just walk sort of in a circle all the way around to get to the castle. Mm-hmm. But you can go on that little thing, but you won't catch me on that.
I would say train, but train on wheels.
It's not a train, it's like a...
It's a land train? I don't know.
No. Oh, no. I don't mean that. I mean the chair thing that you sit on.
Oh, the lift, like...
The lift thing, I would not.
I don't know if you can go on that now, to be honest. I think
it's open.
Yeah, okay. I've never seen anybody on it. Maybe no one's brave enough.
No. So that's the castle as it stands at the moment. Mm-hmm. So ghost sightings were first recorded at Dudley Castle in the 1870s by Harry Bentham, a local man who collected ghost stories. Sightings of ghosts was again recorded in the 1930s and witnessed by a guide and 2 visitors. The guide later reported, "It happened on a fairly quiet afternoon. I was sitting at the bottom of the castle keep with 2 other people, in view of the doorway, when suddenly 2 elderly people came around from the keep, dressed in either 17th or 18th century clothing. They were walking arm in arm, and the man held a crooked walking stick and wore a very tall hat. They walked straight past us and up into the keep. I went after them, but there was no one there. They had just disappeared."
Oh. It's much like the ghosts of Button House, just into the walls they've
exactly. Gone. So 17th and 18th century clothes. Mm-hmm. What ghost would that... Which of our ghosts would that sort of align the most
probably with Thomas, I'd say, wouldn't it? He's like 17th century, isn't he? He's like 18th century.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe Thomas or Kitty.
Yeah. Okay. So then, in 1966, a teenager working at the zoo reported hearing weird noises, which were accompanied by the shape of a woman in a white gown. He resigned soon after the incident. This could be the ghost of the Grey Lady, who was seen in various parts of the castle. It has been suggested that she is Dorothy Beaumont, the wife of the royalist second-in-command who died during childbirth when the castle was besieged by parliamentary forces in 1646. She is said to wander the castle and its grounds, believed to be because her request on her deathbed was not granted. She asked to be buried beside her daughter and that her husband attend the funeral. Because neither of these things occurred, Dorothy continues to be tormented to this day and therefore cannot rest.
Do you think the ghosts would get over it after a bit? They'd be like, it's not worth the hassle of keeping onto this for so long, you know what I mean?
I don't think it's deeper than that. I think it's not something you can just get over.
Do you reckon? 500 years on, you'd be like, still annoyed about this?
I can keep a grudge.
For 500 years?
I would say, yeah. So the ghost of Dorothy can be seen near the castle keep and in the pub that was named after her on the castle grounds, the Grey Lady Tavern. Since opening, there have been many reports here, mostly of unexplained sounds, alarms going off in the middle of the night without explanation, and extreme drops in temperature that's often accompanied by strange blue mist that floats through the bar.
I know a lot of like places have got grey lady ghosts. It's quite a common thing.
So what was a grey lady?
I reckon it's just because like they're always from that period of time where it's like, you know what I mean? Like it was like long gowns and stuff like that is like what women wore. So maybe that would, I don't know, if you turn somebody into a ghost, they go grey and it's like big,
maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah. So the most haunted location in the castle is thought to be the chapel undercroft. In an ancient room, a stone coffin is believed to have once held the body of one of the castle's most feared lords, John Summery, who died in 1321. On many occasions, people have reported seeing legs beside the coffin, believed to be John himself.
Just a pair of legs in the coffin, natural.
So in my references for this bit I'm reading, was an episode of Most Haunted that we watched a little bit of because it's a live episode and it's about 2 hours long.
Yeah, it was quite long.
But they go into that part of the castle and kind of do I wouldn't even say it's a seance, but Derek Okora goes in and he's like definitely...
He's having a chat with one of the ghosts, yeah.
Yeah, whether that was John, I can't quite remember, but he was definitely there, and I remember Yvette Fielding lying in the coffin.
To which you said, why would you do that?
Why would you do that, though? Why would you do that? If nothing else, it's disrespectful.
Yeah, I suppose, but it's like 700 years old, maybe.
That's not the point. That is not the point. But yeah, I think we kind of watched a bit of that Most Haunted episode and I think so. It's ghost hunts here have unveiled some terrifying hauntings, with many images being captured of figures seen peering from the old castle windows and entrances. Those that have ghost hunted at Dudley Castle have described feelings of being touched and being watched. Others have complained of stones being thrown at them, and this happens on a regular basis.
Which I just think Dudley getting stones thrown at you.
Well, maybe, but yeah. Other reports include people having the feeling of their clothes being tugged at or their bodies prodded. On one particular occasion, it is reported that a little girl flipped over a chair during a paranormal investigation.
A little girl ghost, or just like a little girl?
I've got to be honest, I'm not sure. I think a little girl ghost flipped over the chair. Maybe that was... Oh, no, the daughter. She died in childbirth, so that can't be the daughter of Dorothy. But yeah, who knows? I mean, the castle's really old.
Really old.
Really old. So, loads of things might have happened there. On another investigation, a dark, shadowy figure was captured on camera. People have also reported strange grinding sounds coming from the chapel above, and on investigation, the sounds cease. So yeah. So my question, after sort of looking into Dudley Castle and obviously reading about the experiences that people have had with the ghosts, is that obviously we know that Dudley Castle is now a zoo.
Yeah.
And it's quite known that maybe animals are more susceptible to things that humans might not be able to detect or pick up on. So I'd be interested to know if there's been any sort of experiences with animals and if they have sort of acted strangely, that people might think that maybe there's been ghosts around that they've kind of reacted to. Another sort of thing was, are there animal ghosts?
You never hear about that, do you?
No.
Animal ghosts, so is people. It's just a shame, really. Isn't it?
Maybe animals don't have, as I'm sitting watching my cat lick herself, maybe animals don't have that kind of, I can't think of the word.
No soul.
No, they have a soul. I can't think of the word I'm looking for.
Ability that maybe they just I suppose most ghosts are
they just drift off.
Most ghosts are like vengeful, or they're like
have a reason to stay behind.
Cats are just like whatever.
Maybe they don't like kind of or any animal. So if anyone from who knows anything about animals might be able to, or maybe you have a pet or animal that has acted strangely that you think may have been like a ghost or some kind of paranormal activity that made the animal be strange. But yeah, so. Yeah. And have you visited Dudley Castle yourself?
Because the animals there didn't seem perturbed by any ghosts or spirits. They kind of just were, a lot were asleep, to be honest, when we saw them.
It was a hot day.
It was a hot day, yeah. Yeah, so they got bigger fish to fry at that point. But yeah.
So that's the end of the episode. Hopefully you enjoyed the episode. Obviously it's our first episode. I've never done a podcast before, as we've mentioned, so I don't really know what I'm doing, just talking at this point. But we'd really love to know what you think, and let us know what we can do differently or better or keep doing something.
And just your opinions on the episode itself, the actual episode of Ghosts as well. Yeah, just let us know about anything you think on that.
So you can contact us through Instagram. So that's sort of our main social media, I would say, that we're going to try and use. So follow us on Instagram, and you can message us or comment on our posts. So you can find us at Haunting Button House on Instagram. We will post some things to Facebook, to some of the groups. There's lots of groups that have been really friendly and kind already, so we'd love to hear more on those, about what you think. And also you can email us at hauntingbuttonhouse@outlook.com, and we'll kind of maybe have a look through some feedback, and if you've got any comments, we might read them out at some point as well. So we'd really like to hear from you. Yeah,
I'll pop all of this in the actual podcast notes as well. So you'll be able to just click on the link and follow us through there. So next week we are looking at an episode called Guerrilla War, which should be interesting. Do you think we'll see any actual monkeys fighting or anything like that? Do you reckon that's
I hope so.
But anyway, we shall see next week. So we'll speak to you again then.
Bye.
We might have to take a brief note here, as our cat
is taking a shit.